Today I'm at Hull Services and I'm going to be doing a case study on the passive solar greenhouse behind me. Now, Vaden Summers has been the primary force behind getting this passive solar greenhouse installed onto Hull Services and collaborated with Fleur Canada and Verge Permaculture to help design and build and install this passive solar greenhouse. Now, Vaden has been using this as a form of horticultural therapy and is having incredible results. So today, when we go into this case study, we're going to look at some of the design components, how he's using it in horticultural therapy, how the annualized geosolar or climate battery system is functioning, and where he plans on taking his horticultural therapy program as things move forward. So I hope you enjoy this case study and get tons out of it. If you've got any questions, leave it in the comments section below, and we'll see you in the next video.
My name's Vaden Summers. I'm originally from the east coast of Canada. Moved to Alberta about 15 years ago. Came right to work here at Hull Services, and I've been here ever since. A few years ago, I bought a house about 6 years ago in Haysboro. And I started to think about my backyard design. I had a friend that was working here at Hull that had taken his PDC with Jeff Lawton at the time online. So we started talking about permaculture design and water capture and all those things that go along with some urban design ideas. And we were just shooting the shit back and forth all the time. And then we started talking about the work that we're doing here, in particular with the kids, and how we could bring that into this therapeutic milieu, as we call it, and that kind of opened the door to permaculture and led me down the rabbit hole, which a lot of people end up at the bottom of, I think. I was introduced to passive solar greenhouses, I think, right away, because it's one of the kind of things that you hear about the most. Like if you type in permaculture design in a Google search, you get to the water capture, passive solar greenhouses, all that kind of stuff kind of pops up instantly. So I kind of had it on my radar, but I knew very little about it. I talked to my colleague about them. He was thinking about building one in his backyard. And to me, it seemed like a really interesting starting point for the development of a garden would be to have access to an indoor space for growing, especially in our climate here in Calgary. I'd already suffered a few disastrous hail-ridden crops at my house. So I knew that there was the danger of that happening in any sort of growing scenario here in Calgary. So that was on my mind. And then also being at the school and thinking about developing an area for education, the greenhouse really lends itself well to extending your seasons. So I knew my context here is obviously we're here until the end of June. So we'd like to get started with this kind of stuff if we can. And what we experienced last year, we were able to get out in the greenhouse in February. So I kind of knew that at the outset that would be an advantage, just to have the season extension and be able to pull it off into November, hopefully December, with the design that we have going now. Yeah, so initially it was just interest on my part and my colleague's part. We did a little permaculture design plan, which I call one of the foundational documents of the design we have now. And he ended up leaving, going to another organization, so everything kind of stalled at that point. And then we had one of our big partners in the design and build of the greenhouse is Fleur Canada, who's been awesome. And they ended up kind of coming through the front door just on a total cold call, touring the school and talking about some ideas that they could take part in to deal with, so they could get involved more with the kids at the school. And I had a chance to sit down with Adam Douglas and Kristen Brown at the time, and they said, "Hey, we're really interested in doing something here at the school. Tell me all your hopes and dreams," essentially. And at the time, that permaculture idea was just in my head. I really, at the time, still didn't even know what the word meant, but I knew that was something I was interested in pursuing with the kids. So I just brought it up just on a whim, essentially, and said, "Hey, we're really interested in a garden development, a horticulture program. I'm recently interested in permaculture design." We kind of started bouncing ideas back and forth. I had kind of been informally allocated a section of the outside of the school. Many people won't know, but Hull Services sits on about 35 acres of property here in Woodbine in the southwest of Calgary. So we have a beautiful campus. We've been here for 50 plus years, I think maybe 54, 56 years we've been down here. There's beautiful old growth trees all around. And there's an area adjacent to the school to the southwest that was kind of old trees, but a lot of open grassland. And luckily I have a good relationship with the maintenance supervisor here. So I said, hey, if the opportunity came up, would I be able to use some of the land adjacent to the school? And he said, yeah, if you can get the ball rolling, go ahead. So I mentioned that to Fleur at the time, and we finished the tour, and they went away, and I expected, maybe never to hear from them again. And the following week, they called me up and they said, we want to do it. And I said, well, what do you mean we want to do it? It's like, we want to do the greenhouse. We want to do the horticulture program. We want to do the garden. We want to start the project. So it kind of floored me, but that was definitely the starting point. And that's when Rob got involved at Verge, and the ball started rolling, and that was a couple years ago. And last September of last year, we completed our 500 square foot passive solar greenhouse with the help of Fleur and Verge Permaculture. No, we didn't have really a whole lot of constraints. Obviously, financing is always a constraint. Like we were aware that building a passive solar greenhouse like the one we wanted to build was going to be a big financial undertaking to build it the size that we wanted. But luckily, Fleur was on board with implementing a design that was going to be functional, that was going to be used over the long term, that was going to be resilient, and as we are here at Hull Services, ready to kind of stand the test of time. So they didn't spare any expense, and they put over 2,000 hours in as an organization in the design implementation of the passive solar greenhouse. So once the ball started rolling, it was all volunteer hours, which was also a bit of to wrangle that many volunteers over an extended period of time is sometimes a challenge. But I mean, days here we had upwards of 20 or 30 volunteers from that organization. Lots of companies in the city came out to help. Just off my head, like Burnco was bringing in cement trucks on off days, and just random people showing up to help out, and it really had a real community strengthening feel to it, and that's the way it took off, and we were so happy when it was finally completed, and it's exactly as ordered. So if we talk about like season extension, always the first thing comes to mind is heating. In our climate. So one of the key things that I kind of knew about and that I wanted to implement and design was what I've heard called a climate battery, or an annualized geosolar system, which is basically, as many people maybe watching this know, it's a system that captures heat from inside the greenhouse and stores it down in the subsoils. So our greenhouse has a insulated concrete form wall that goes down a little over 5 feet. So it's tubbed out, the soil's all put back in, it's put back in on top of this annualized geosolar system. It has fans that push the air down into the ground, stores the air in the ground, and releases it back into the greenhouse set on a thermostat. So that was one system that we knew to get us into that February, March start time and extend it into November, December. It was one system that we knew we had to have. And moving forward, after being with the greenhouse for almost a year now and going through one winter season and a grow season, we're also talking about extending that season even farther by adding supplemental heat inside. And this summer was super hot in Calgary. So we did experience like temperatures, 40 plus degrees some days in the greenhouse. Talking about constraints, we're on kind of in a secure facility, so lots of times doors have to be locked, and we did our best to ventilate, but we might need to add some additional ventilation to the greenhouse in order to get it cooled down in the summertime. And then plant selection, picking the right plants. Like some of our plants did really well this summer. We put in some fig trees, and we grew a bunch of peppers, as you guys will see. They did really well. They didn't mind the heat. Some other stuff didn't do so well. Yeah, so we're standing at the southwest corner of our 500 square foot passive solar greenhouse here at Hull Services. Let's go inside. So you can hear our AGS systems kind of running. I'll shut it off. So it's pretty cool. The AGS system that Fleur put in obviously is very robust. We have two 550 CFM fans running, kind of pulling from the system in the roof. The greenhouse was really cool. The kids were really interested in, when I started explaining some of these systems to them, they're really interested in how well they work and what the temperatures are and how hot's it going to get, how hot is it today. So we took the time to kind of install a bunch of Bluetooth sensors through the whole greenhouse. So there's Bluetooth sensors on the intakes of the AGS system, on the exhaust. We have soil temperatures. We have ambient inside temperatures and relative humidity. We have outside ambient temperatures and relative humidity. And it's been a real hit with the kids being able to kind of record that information and get real-time data back. And we can graph everything. We use these monitors called onset monitors, and they give real-time graphs to your phone. So the kids can kind of come in and say, hey, it's 40 plus degrees Celsius at the roof. Coming out the exhaust of the fans, it's like 20 degrees Celsius. So what's happening there, and try to explain some of those concepts about phase shift and all those catchwords that you hear about, and actually knowing that that's transferring heat out of the greenhouse into the ground that we can gather later for to extend our season is really interesting to kids. Yeah, this is kind of the brains of the AGS system. It's pretty basic solar setup. It's on a 24-volt system. Yeah, we have our inverter shut-offs, battery banks down there. We did wire everything for additional lighting and fans for circulation, but we haven't wired anything in. So our focus was to get the AGS system up and running. So there's our solar panels. They're up on the roof. They come down to these fan housings, which we use some really big on building with recycled materials. So we took a bunch of materials that we were using in the build and repurposed them for everything that we could, essentially. So one really cool thing we did, we took some old drum cymbals and cut out some housings for our fans, and then used the old IPEX to build the housings for the fans. So there's a 550 CFM fan on that side, one on that side. They're actually sucking air into the system. So the system, when it runs, it sucks air in, which I don't know if that's optimal or not as far as the mechanics of a fan goes, but it works really well to the point where when I turned it on initially, before I had any of my duct work running, it pulled the hat off my head down into the pipe. So it really sucks, is what I'm saying. So it's set to a thermostat. Right now I have it set at 26 degrees Celsius for heating and cooling right now. So it fires up obviously when it hits those benchmarks. And notion being in the really hot days when the AGS system's pulling air, it's blowing out air that's 26 degrees Celsius, which is about 10 degrees or 15 degrees cooler than what's in the greenhouse presently. Yeah, so that's the AGS system, and then we kind of start to lay out our floor plan with microgreens in mind, because I figured it'd be a good venture for us to get engaged with the kids because of the turnaround time of production. So when we started to do our floor plan, we did a big potting table, and this year we plan on kind of venturing into the microgreens world a little bit more. We did dabble with it last year for sure, and we pushed out a bunch of trays and had it bumping pretty early in the season. So eventually we'd like to have a microgreens production that's kind of running, especially in the shoulder seasons, like up to summertime before we go on break. And then again, when we get back, is to get an operation up and running that we can kind of flow through the greenhouse. So we prep that up by building tables, understanding that the floor space in the greenhouse is very valuable, like the square footage is very valuable. So we want to make sure that we're making the best use of that. So we're trying to develop a system where we can kind of still grow. Like this year we grew a bunch of greens underneath our microgreen tables, which kind of hit perfectly because when we shut down microgreens, these guys were just starting to kind of come up. So that was a project that kind of worked really well for us. So we got a bunch of lettuce and kale and spinach and beets and stuff that grew underneath our microgreens table. So that's something that we'll use again in the following years. And then, as I said earlier, like, it's really important for us to have a lively space that has a lot of energy that we can use year round. So we are going to do a lot of perennial plants this year, as we started last year. So we bought a couple fig trees last year from a place called Figs for Life in BC. So they mailed them to us from BC, and they were just like little whips, basically. So this guy is a desert fig. So we put him in the ground as a little whip, and as you can see, he's extremely happy in here. So we want to have a lot of perennial plants growing, so the space is lively, kind of year round. They're taking off early in the season. The kids can kind of, one of the kids just came in when we shut the video and was asking after the grape, because he was involved in building the rock for the grape, which he said would kind of keep the grape warm. So we built that project, and then the grape's really taking off. It's a Himrod grape. And then we put in another brown turkey fig into the ground too. So those are the start of our perennial planting on the back wall. So those figs hopefully will grow up, and then we can espalier them down the rafters and start eating figs. But kids are really excited about taste, and it's really good for them to experience all these different flavors and tastes. Like we did stevia this year from seed. The stevia was a big hit, obviously. So the kids are really interested in engaging in taste testing, and a lot of the kids, the microgreens especially, I had kids telling me that they've never eaten a green vegetable before, and it just blew my mind. But they're eating, when they're coming in, they're slashing down these sunflower sprouts and eating them and saying that, I've never eaten a leafy green vegetable before, which explains a lot to me, because the kids are really seriously deficient in nutrient-dense food. So the more that you can get that kind of stuff in front of kids and let them experience it, I'd say all the time, if you want kids to eat a vegetable, and this is rung true in the project, if you want kids to eat a vegetable, have them grow a vegetable. They will eat the vegetable, guaranteed. Because they take pride in cultivating it and germinating the seed and then cultivating it, bringing it up, and then picking it and eating it. It's a no-brainer. They'll do it every time. Yeah, so talking about expansion of the project to the greenhouse space is obviously with a few more bells and whistles. Like I said, I want to increase the heat into the shoulder seasons. I want to increase ventilation in the summer, so that'll maybe put some exhaust fans actually blowing out the windows. The windows are on these temperature sensitive actuators, so they open and close with the heat and cold. But maybe next year blowing the windows out altogether in the summertime to just really push that ventilation. Right now when they open at a kind of a max of like 15 inches or so, which I probably should have blew out a bunch of the high windows this summer. And then talking about expansion, the greenhouse, like I said, is about 495 square feet. And talking with Flora and talking about expanding into an outdoor space, the area under design outside the greenhouse, most immediately to the north side of the greenhouse, we're talking about doing a big classroom space, outdoor classroom space that's timber frame covered. It has an outdoor kitchen, like all your permaculture standards, like your cob ovens and things like that, which really brings the community together. The school that I work at is only about 100 students max. So it's a really tight-knit community. It can be a volatile community. There's a lot of people are processing through a lot of stuff, kids and staff included, I think. So it's really great. It's got a beautiful community feel. It persists all through the year, when we just get closer and closer as an organization and as a group of students and staff. So coming together in those healthy spaces and enjoying food together, that's going to naturally, I think, grow the program and connect kids. Kids are extremely connected to the program already, and I expect that any additions that we make will only increase that idea. Yeah, we want to, most importantly, like for our context, is it's important to get the kids out into the greenhouse and out into the space. As I mentioned, we got a pretty large area under design, and it's growing as it kind of proceeds. The organization has been a little bit more open to developing the land in a way that's going to be really useful. As I said, the majority of our 35 acres is either buildings or grass, which requires a lot of maintenance. So from a maintenance standpoint, purely, it's a good use of the space. But most importantly, like, we want to get the kids out of the school and into the space, essentially. So my ambition is kind of to surround the entire school with a learning environment where kids can get in touch with natural things, where they can see food production happening, where they can see insects moving around. These what I've realized is some of these areas become almost diversity dead zones, so to speak, and you see very little action on 30 acres of grass. There's not much happening. But as soon as you start moving some of this diversity in, you start to see everything comes back to life, and more animals show up, more insects show up. So I really want to promote that idea of building the space into a natural space that the kids have access to every day. We do a lot of outdoor education here, which requires us to leave campus frequently, which is really paperwork heavy. It increases the amount of risk, especially with the type of clients that we deal with. So if we can keep them here and keep them on site and get that same educational experience on site, it works much better for us. So that's the goal, is kind of keep developing and keep the idea moving forward. Yeah, like thinking about change in design, as I mentioned earlier, it's super hot. And I was warned when we started the program that your greenhouse is your ventilation is going to be your biggest issue, and that's the truth. It has been this year. So I think as you kind of go through a couple growing seasons, like this has been our first, we discovered, that's really hot in there, and that we're going to have to provide some additional ventilation for the summer. If we want to truly extend our season into February, we want to keep those plants that require a little bit warmer zone, then we're going to have to put some supplementary heat in there. So I'm in the process of doing that now, is like upgrading what we have. Obviously the foundational, I couldn't be more happy with the foundational starting point that Floors provided. It's a beautiful canvas to work with. I want to include the kids more in design as we move forward, now that the kind of bricks and mortar are done. Like, we're talking about doing some murals on the doors and getting the kids more engaged in the actual design of the property. And the greenhouse is just the beginning, as I see it.
If you're looking to build your own passive solar greenhouse and you're looking for more insights and ideas around how you could potentially build one on your property, you might be interested in seeing some of our other case studies. We have done case studies on geodesic greenhouses, small greenhouses, massive greenhouses, and everything in between. What's great about these case studies is you'll get all sorts of ideas and insights about how you can bring a passive solar greenhouse into your own life or business by watching what other people have done with their passive solar greenhouses. If you really liked this video and you got lots out of it, please share it and help share Vaden's message. You can hit the like button and leave us a comment and let us know what you think. If there's other videos about passive solar greenhouses that you're interested in seeing, please let us know and we'll be happy to make a few.